and that's going to force Cris to, waste more time. Dyrus possibly trying to get a hit in on him. Nope, he's just going to back right there. So Cris is going to be able to get back to lane, as you said, early enough to get there before creeps get there. But it's gonna be cool to see if there is any of that early aggression, because I think that may have been more like a mock early aggression rather than actual, because they did start claw 5, so we might see more farming. Let's see who can hit level 2 first. But we'll have to wait and see, because we never know what'll come out of these higher up Riven players.
Yeah, and yeah, so the game minions have spawned. They're gonna come out mid lane. Maybe we'll see another early brawl like that. It's very possible. Cris actually shared with us a lot of his strategy for Riven and what he thinks is going to be important coming into these matches in an interview. So we'll actually air that interview after this match before Game 2. And you guys can hear a little bit about what Cris thinks about this whole thing and his charity, that kind of thing. So looks like a mirror trade coming out between Dyrus and Cris. Dyrus burns the Ignite. So this is an interesting strategy from Cris. So what he's trying to do here is, so Dyrus used that Ignite. So Cris is going to say, okay, you burned your Ignite. I'm not going to burn my summoner spells. We have a fight here again. Cris uses Barrier and Ignite both on Dyrus.
Right. And I think something to note there is that I think Cris actually was able to break Barrier and give Ignite a little bit more of a tick on Dyrus. So based off of how many pots, and Cris is out of pots though, but he has a bunch rolling. Oh, another fight here breaking out. Dyrus very low. Cris has more health than Dyrus, but Dyrus does have those extra potions, so if Cris is able to keep up these engagements, he might be able to pull off a first blood.
Yeah, and both players have plenty of health potions to, keep healthy. Dyrus hit level 2, so Cris isn't even going to try to contest that at all. He's going to sit back, wait till he hits level 2 himself, and then maybe look for a trade. So what I saw Cris doing in the beginning that I think he might have been better off doing, so he sees Dyrus using Ignite. After that, maybe Cris can just walk back, use the health potions to full HP, and then fight Dyrus and know that he's an Ignite up on Dyrus in that next fight. But he got into a fight a little earlier than normal, and looks like Dyrus gets baited into a bad trade there, and Dyrus is going to have to go back to base, maybe miss out on a few farm, and come back to lane.
Yeah, and I think something to note there is that Dyrus he took that accidental power shot. He didn't realize how close that was, and that may be the case with a lot of players who saw Dyrus earlier bait, jobbing into taking that tower shot and was able to take him out, with that really good tower bait. So if he's unable to make the proper decisions later on, and Cris is able to turn something around on him, it's going to be very dangerous. He's going to have to pay attention to all of the things around him and not get too cocky. Yeah,
definitely. So, here Cris hasn't gone back to lane yet. He's chosen to, rather than try to shove the lane before Dyrus gets back to lane, which might have been, like a race against time that he might not have won, he just wants to freeze the lane and get the very last hits on everything, and just keep the lane there in the middle so we can brawl it out more. And Dyrus came back in a lane with no more advantage on Cris than Cris has on him. Maybe the extra health potions will help him out, but he didn't come back in a lane with like a Doran's Blade or something that's gonna help him win the trade. So I think they're fairly in a 1v1 trade. They're fairly matched up. Now obviously if they trade and then Dyrus backs off, uses those health potions and comes back in, Dyrus has a slight advantage there. But in a straight up brawl, they're okay. But it looks like Cris is going to go back to base, see what he can pick up. Maybe a Doran's Blade here. And we see the Doran's Blade coming out. And a few health potions coming back to top lane. Gonna try to brawl out with that advantage he has in the Doran's Blade.
Yeah, I think it would have been interesting to see if Cris had stayed, but he wanted to brawl with Dyrus until he was low on that health. But then it could have been brought to almost a dangerous level had they gotten closer, an inch closer and closer to 6, because they do both have, I remember you saying that they both had 21-9 masteries.
Right, yeah.
So they do have that executioner, they do have that talent where it's more damage the lower you get. So it would have been more dangerous for Cris to stay with full health and no regeneration items.
Right, and this is kind of a difference we've seen today in the players. So people like, Cris and Dyrus, they're more, I guess, they're being conservative, making sure they don't make any mistakes, that kind of thing. So when they get to that low HP point, where they get below 50%, that Executioner Mastery is going to kick in, then, they're going to play safe and kind of both back off is what we've seen. Now, when we watch someone like PewDiePie and Yarn, they've been kind of just, when they get low, they both go all in on each other, just play super aggressive and end the game before the 5-minute mark. These players are more, conservative, trying to not make any mistakes, and end the game, in a more organized fashion.
Right, and we see Cris going hard in onto Dyrus there, getting the Ignite down on him, bringing him low, kind of just trying to get him lower and lower until they get to that 6 point when he can eventually all-in him and take him out, but just a lot of mechanical play here. Cris waiting for Dyrus to use some abilities before he does all-in. And that's just a style we've seen from a lot of these more experienced players here.
Yeah, and I think maybe as the tournament goes on, maybe we'll see some shifts in these Runes and Masteries, because, you know, we have Wicked in the chat here saying that he thinks that the Runes and Masteries aren't that good that either player is using in this matchup. So, or actually Runes and starter items is what he said. So, I think Wicked probably prefers the red pot as a starter item, which is what we've seen from a lot of players this tournament, and then, you know, not so much defense in the rune pages, go more offense. And I can see where that's coming from, because, you know, taking armor, while that may, you know, deflect some damage, when you get the AD runes in there, you do more damage and you negate more damage because your shields goes off of AD.
Well, and we saw a lot of that early aggression from QtPie and Yarn, and it allowed for a lot more diversity in their play. But here we see an all-in from Dyrus. Dyrus popping the ulti, going in onto Cris. Cris still not popping his ultimate. He's just backing off. Dyrus putting ulti. Cris turning on his ulti and immediately ulting Dyrus in the face. Dyrus coming back in with a stun, another stun, back and forth over again. Cris going in at a Dyrus. Dyrus popping his barrier. Cris valoring away, getting his shield up. So just a back and forth trade over and over again by both these players.
Yeah, so we have both summoners down again. Neither player has Q at the moment. Well, Cris just got it back. So Q is one of those big cooldowns that you're going to see, because Q, you know, has 3 ticks that you can use. The mobility is huge, the damage is huge, and it procs the passive. Everything's good about having that Q. So when one player sees that the other player doesn't have Q up, they're going to want to go in every single time. And, you know, these players, you know, Cris and Dyrus, both very strong top laners. You know, Cris probably known more for his Riven than Dyrus is. Dyrus doesn't really play much of that Riven. Dyrus is more of like a tank player, maybe some Rumble here and there. Cris is, you know, Riven has been his main historically. So, you know, both very good players. Cris is up 10 CS, not a huge lead, but, you know, I guess I would consider it notable. You know, it's a good thing to see and recognize. He's 10 CS ahead. Dyrus just lost that farm to the tower.
Dyrus did just pick up another Doran's Blade. We'll have to see what Cris does go for. I suspect a Doran's as well. But no, he does actually finish and build that Ninja Tabby, so that's very interesting. This is the first time we, on this stream, have seen Ninja Tabby in the tournament.
Yep, definitely the first time we've seen Ninja Tabby. So what I think shies players away from that Ninja Tabby, you know, the passive on it, you know, the reduction from basic attacks, 10% from basic attacks, is really strong. But move speed isn't something these players have been valuing so much. So it looks like Cris actually was glad to take that extra move speed and have that Ninja Tabby passive. I think it's a pretty good pickup, to be honest, because if you look at Riven's passive, her auto attacks are, I think they do more damage than her spells do when you're trading like that. So, so you know, blocking that damage from the auto attacks is really going to help.
And I think that move speed kind of ties into that chase theory I was talking about earlier, where when you harass your enemy, and Cris actually freezing the wave here is just going to, you know, deny Dyrus some of this farm. He actually does a couple of tower baits here, which I really like, but that kind of chase theory where if the enemy comes in on you, you can be patient and chase them back, and with that extra move speed, he's going to be able to get in more auto attacks while Dyrus has his back turned to him and is trying to run away.
Yeah, and this is really something that, you know, with the Ninja Tabby buy, you know, there's 2 sides to it. Of course, the 10% from reduction is good. You know, it's gonna help. But the decision you have to make is it good enough to warrant spending all that extra money on the move speed from the boots? And, you know, I guess when Cris looked at it, his answer to that question was yes, it is worth it. So he picked up the Ninja Tabby.
Yeah, and kind of an all-out brawl coming here. Both players have their ultimates pop. Cris getting the Ignite onto Dyrus. Is Cris going to be able to get this extra damage onto Dyrus? He does get the last auto attack and ends up getting a first blood onto Dyrus.
So maybe
Cris could pick